If you've been on trenches for a while, you know the exact sound of a SIF error at 2 a.m. in the morning. You know all the transactions of APO by hearted. You have the whole planning book in your mind as a map for anyone to navigate through. And let's face it, for over 20 years, APO has been one of the greatest tools acting as a backbone for a lot and a lot of big supply chains of the world. It has been strong, it has been rigid, but at the same time, it was revolutionary for its time if you think through. But the clock has been set. Now, if you look at it that way, that we have a sunset date fixed for APO to go down and the security blanket has been taken out. If you're still running your global planning on APO, you're not only managing a technical debt, but also running your supply chain on a ghost ship. Today's topic is APO replacement strategy. And this is not about a software update. This is more about a heart transplant for your business. I'm Rahul Sasnaman, and this is Zero Bias, Only Supply Chain Insights. We all know this is coming, right? But then why are so many companies not into it already? This is predominantly, according to me, for two reasons. One is that APO feels comfortable, right? And I have been part of this journey for quite some time. And I am part of the problem in the past where we have had this complex, highly customized solutions built for the customers just based on the whims and fancies of the requirements that was put on the table. But what does this mean? This would mean that you are overburdening or you have already overburdened the system with Z tables, which you can't even count on your fingers anymore. And at the same time, we are also talking about a lot of complex solutions put in. Probably no one even understands it anymore. Let me give you an example. There was a customer where a big bug was identified in its core of supply planning algorithm, again, which was an advanced, complex, customized solution that was implemented. And then what happened? Yeah. Imagine no one was able to touch that code only because of the fact that the developer who built that algorithm was out on leave. This would mean that you need to wait for the developer to be back. And that was 4 weeks from the time where we found the bug, and then the work could resume itself. It gives us main problems that you can see from this example. One is that you are dependent on people. Second, you're making the processes more and more complex, so much so that apart from the person who developed it, no one else understands it. How do you expect this kind of a solution to be scalable? That's problem number one. Problem number two, it's actually not of the planners or the organization to get into a new technology, which was basically APO successor, so to speak, but it is also to a fact that it's a mindset shift. So if you try to make this whole thing of APO, which is going from lift and shift from APO into any kind of advanced planning algorithms, this simply won't work. That's because APO has taught us to be a little more rigid. That means let's run the weekend planning run, yeah, and let's wait for the whole week and work with it. But then when you look at more advanced planning tools such as IBP, Kinexus, O9s of the world, that's more on a fluid planning mechanism. Let me give an example. In APO days, you didn't have good scenario planning capabilities. People who have been working in APO, you guys can vouch for it. This would mean any kind of major planning run that had to be taken place has to be done on the weekend. And over the week, you need to live with that planning results. Let's cut to the chase with some advanced planning tools. How does that work? Is you go into those systems and you start running scenarios and you create those scenarios which makes the planning much more flexible, less rigid as compared to APO. And now you're not waiting for the weekend planning run only to work. You are able to shape the future of the planning based on the nuances of the market as of today. And this is where it becomes more and more interesting for us to understand how we can take this forward and think about a different mindset rather than just lift and shift the APO into IDP or any kind of other planning tools. I have seen many mistakes during this journey of APO migration, but two of the most critical mistakes is what we will talk about today. One of the biggest mistakes that I see is trying to make IBP look and feel exactly like APO. I have seen companies spending millions and millions of dollars only to force the cloud native attribute based planning solution into their fixed hierarchical grid. If you don't redesign your data model for flexibility, you are basically missing 90% of the value of the new planning solution. Let me give you an example. In this journey with multiple customers, the single most basic question that I always hear is, hey, this functionality, I don't see what I used to have it in APO. Hey, this screen doesn't look the way as it used to look in APO. Why can't I not have such basic flexibility when it comes to IBP, what I used to have it in APO? I mean, these are the questions which becomes very, very difficult to answer purely because one is that you're trying to change the technology, but at the same time, change also the mindset of the person behind the screen. One has to understand any kind of cloud native solutions are analytical engine and it is not a transactional engine like APO. We need to stop trying to build a digital version of your, I don't know, 1990s processes which were true and relevant for APO into the new planning tools. The second most common mistake that we do is ignoring the human side of the migration. In APO, the planners were system managers. In IBP, they need to be decision architects. There's a big difference. Yeah, one is telling the system that needs to be done, while the second way is really need to find those points on which you need to make those decisions and let the system talk to you. Many projects fail because they hit the technical go live but ignore the user readiness. Let's take a hypothetical case. And actually, in fact, it's very common these days. You see a project plan, most of the time is in the design and of course followed by implementation of the solution. But when you look at it on the fat end of the project, which is basically the training mechanisms, the train the trainer approach, actually end user training, etc., it kind of slims down as we speak. That means you're letting the planners be on a very thin ice. The planners are not very much capable of using the new solution to its utmost potential as they were comfortable using APO. If your planners have not been trained to use dashboards and exceptions, instead of scrolling through rows and rows of key figures, they will inherently revert to their shadow Excel files within 48 hours. It's not because they are not open to the new technology, it's only because it's a fear of unknown. They just simply are not aware of what's the best way to tackle the problem at hand, but rather go back into Excel, do some minor calculations, and then copy paste that results into the system. And if someone tells you that replacement of APU, it's a technical migration project, you can straight away say, no, it's not a technical migration project. It's a change management project disguised as an IT project. How should a planning system of 2026 and beyond look like? The buzzword for 2026 and beyond is clean core. When you replace APU, your goal should be to eliminate 90% of your custom code. Why? Now imagine you are going and buying a particular software. There, The software is making claims of all the buzzwords in the world. Agentic AI, generative AI, etc., etc. But now look at the other side. These softwares are making sure that they are able to update themselves almost every quarter. Now look at on your side. If your solution, which you are trying to replace APO into another IBP solution, and if you make it too customized, all these new AI agents, generative AI, etc., won't be simply able to read your custom fields. Here is where you will be left frustrated, where you have a Ferrari which you have bought, but you're not able to drive it more than 50 kilometers. Yes, for now, 50 kilometers is enough for me to drive. But those scream of why you wanted to buy this kind of a solution, like those agentic AIs or the generative AIs, is something you're not able to absorb. And this is bringing me to a very important topic, is the standardization of your solution. We always start any kind of projects where we say we need the best practice implementation. We need really the standardization of your solutions. But when it comes to the later stages of the implementation, we kind of lose the track. And I often say standardization is the new competitive advantage. This is the one which allows you to have those quarterly updates from your vendors and to stay ahead of the competition. Whereas if you have completely customized solution, you just are not simply able to absorb them. What do I like to call it is a 18th month countdown, the roadmap, where to start. If you are staring at that deadline, what should I do tomorrow to really make this happen? We need to make it happen in three simple steps. One, process audit. Don't look at the software on which you would want to implement, but look at your SAP process. Is this really mapping heavy or data driven? I'll give you an example. There has been instances in the past where we have seen the colleagues going in endless groups for hours together, thinking about if I want to keep the production shop floor open during Christmas break or not. And interestingly, all these discussions for hours were not supported by data on both sides. One is the fact if you want to keep it open, or on the other side, we can keep it closed as before. All these kind of decisions needs to be data driven, but not on just simply gut feel. Any kind of monetary decisions cannot be made only on gut feel. It has to be backed by data. And that is why the process audit takes the cake as the point number one. The second one, I simply call it data health check. This means if there is garbage going into the planning system, you cannot expect anything else but garbage out. You need to run an assessment on all your master data, be the material master or the vendor master, etc., to make sure that the input that is going into any kind of planning engine is good enough, worthy enough to be looked at or worked upon by the system. All these IBP solutions that we have in the market is less forgiving for any kind of data which is dirty than what APO was. Third point, and which is the basic and the obvious one, is the pilot scope. I would say pick a region. There is already a lot more changes happening when we replace APO to any kind of solution in the future. And you have a combination of your technical changes, your user adoption changes, your business changes, etc. And I would not recommend to change all the variables at one go across the globe. So my recommendation would be to pick a region, move the demand planning into IBP first, because demand planning is comparatively simpler and it still reacts or weighs on the ways of working of APO was. Once you move the demand planning to IBP, prove the value of complex algorithms like demand sensing, etc., then we can try to move towards more complex supply planning solutions and manufacturing constraints. And within the supply planning constraints, there we need to segregate it between tactical and operational planning. For tactical planning, generally it can consider or it can work on your IBP solutions that we have. And then your operational planning is a questionable topic. It will depend on your business if you would want to move towards this planning solution or you want to move towards SAP S4, for example. These are the important decisions and milestones which you should make before we start the whole implementation. Replacing APO is a once in a lifetime career opportunity. You are not just swapping a tool, you are redefining how your company reacts in a volatile world. Don't let your system integrator tell you it's a technical migration, but it's an opportunity to kill the shadow systems and finally build a supply chain that works in real time. I'm Rahul Sosnaman. If you are stuck in the APO to IBP mud, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's get your planning back on track. Before you go, here is your zero bias challenge. Go to your most experienced listener, the one who has been using APO for 15 years or more. Ask them if you could never use an Excel spreadsheet again, what is the one piece of information you would need SAP to show you every morning? Write that down. And that, my friend, is the single answer to your true requirement for your migration. Everything else is just noise. Stop planning for your past, start architecting for the future.